Good morning, everyone. Meteorologist Tawana Andrew here with you this morning. Brian Good has the day off, so you get little old me, and I just realized how short I look right now. Oh, man. Okay. Yeah, I forgot to adjust the camera there, so y'all are actually seeing how tiny I actually am. I'm only 5'2", so... Yeah, here we go. So what we're looking at, of course, keeping an eye on the rain coming our way for later on tonight. So we're going to continue to keep an eye on that. And yeah, the big topic of conversation as we head into the next 24 to 48 hours will be that rain. And Nancy, you're already touching on it. Good morning. In anticipation for Friday night, I work until 8:15 p.m. A little nervous as a lot of the streets are low lying. Yeah, the flooding threat. We completely understand, Nancy, for so many of us is going to be the big topic of conversation, and not just the flash flooding threat, but the potential as well as we head over really the next couple of days to see some river flooding starting to really pick up as well. So we have to keep an eye on a lot going on over the next 24 to 48 hours with all of this rain coming our way. But right now, actually outside is looking pretty decent, seeing some breaks in those clouds. So beautiful across the area right now on our SkyTrack camera. So pretty nice start to the day. We have the front that is off towards our north right now. So we're going to continue to keep an eye, of course, on that rain that will eventually arrive for more of us later on tonight. Southern Indiana, you get in on the rain first. So just a heads up. And hi, Rhonda. I know I haven't been in the gym in a while. So I'm going to have to get back to that. But that probably won't be until next week, I'm being completely honest. Good morning to you. So what we're seeing, of course, quiet weather for most of the region right now. We did have to deal with a little bit of that drizzle earlier this morning, and that is something that can still happen for many of you. And notice just off towards our west, I'm going to just move the camera a little bit so you can see. Here comes the rain. This looks to potentially clip some of our southern Indiana counties. And if you were watching on Sunrise, you heard me talk about the potential for a little bit of that rain in southern Indiana as we got towards lunchtime. And that is that rain trying to move your way. So that's going to be the first little bit of rain, but it's not the main story though until we get to later on tonight. So let's dive into a little bit more what we're seeing across the area with that sunshine and more of that southerly wind. Boy, are we warming up. Already up to 66 at the airport in Louisville, 67 in Bardstown, 66 in Paoli. So you can certainly see where those higher elevations are, because those are the warmer areas, getting a little bit more of that southerly wind. And we do look to climb into the 70s for later on today. But of course, the temperatures will be really dictated, I should say, by how much of that sunshine and how strong this southerly southwesterly wind is going to be. So both of those will work together to really help us out in terms of pushing those temperatures up. So if you get a little bit more of that sunshine, you could easily see 75, 76, 77 for later on today. If you get stuck underneath those thicker clouds as we head into the afternoon, you're talking upper 60s, low 70s, and that's it for you. So we do have to keep an eye on those temperatures for today. It is breezy out there with those wind gusts between 20 and 30 miles per hour right now. So a little bit of a gusty morning, and we're going to keep these wind gusts in the 25 to 35 mile per hour range throughout the rest of the day. So updo. Yep, definitely an updo kind of day for sure. Now, as we continue into tonight, that is when the flood watch for most of us will kick in. That is mainly along and north of the parkways. Yes, it does include Louisville. Starts at 8 p.m., lasts all the way into Saturday afternoon. So basically through tonight, all of Friday, and into the first half of your Saturday, this flood watch will last. And we have to, of course, keep an eye on those thunderstorm chances starting tonight. And Michelle, you bring up a really good point. New dog, have no idea how she will do with the new storms. Hopefully she does okay. Maybe get her a thunder shirt or a thunder blanket or something like that, just in case she doesn't like the loud rumbles of thunder, because we will be seeing quite a few rumbles of thunder and quite a bit of lightning with some of these storms as well. So let's just break down what the Futurecast has for us for the rest of the day. Going to be seeing some of that rain tracking through the area as we get towards lunchtime for those of you in southern Indiana. That is something we're going to be watching closely. You see a decent amount of lightning with these storms, some pockets of heavier rain as well. So we'll have to keep an eye on all of that. Temperatures easily climbing into the 70s, like I mentioned, for this afternoon. And then a little bit of dry time for a lot more of us once we get into later on this afternoon. Then once we get closer to sunset, here comes that cold front that I showed you that's off towards our north, slowly but surely pushing into Indiana. And notice, start to see more of those yellows and oranges. Yep, that is that rain coming down a lot heavier first in southern Indiana. So for those of you south of the Ohio River, you may not see a drop of rain until tomorrow morning. And you'll be watching me on Sunrise being like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Rain is dry as a bone outside. Well, Indiana's like, it's been nonstop forever. So we're going to be in between the two of these as we head throughout your Friday morning. So we're going to start off Friday morning on a soggy note, especially in southern Indiana. And with that first batch of rain that we see moving in come tonight into early tomorrow, we do have a marginal risk of severe weather out. And with that, we have to keep an eye on a small hail threat that will be in the forecast, but it's really going to be the wind that will be the main thing. But that won't really come into play until Friday in terms of severe weather. So let's dive into a little bit more of what we're going to be looking at. Of course, we have the alert day out for your Friday, and I mentioned more of that widespread heavier rain moving into southern Indiana as we get past midnight into early Friday morning. We're talking 3, 4 o'clock. That's when more of that rain looks to be sinking to the south of the Ohio. So right along that Ohio River and up towards the north is where the majority of that rain is going to be. And this particular model brings more of the heavier rain further to the south into Kentucky a little bit quicker. And that's something we have to watch for the morning commute tomorrow, because I know there's still quite a few schools that are still in session. That's something that we'll have to watch pretty closely as well. Anybody taking a TARP bus tomorrow morning, this is going to be rough. Just driving around. Flooding is going to be an issue. Flash flooding is going to be an issue with these several rounds of rain. Those of you in southern Indiana getting the full brunt of it first, and then everybody gets in on it as we head throughout your Friday. So this is lunch on Friday. Notice still some of those reds, oranges, yellows on your screen indicating that heavy rain still around. Temperatures are going to be hovering in the 50s and low 60s through this point, keeping that same thing going through the afternoon and watching for the potential for a little bit of dry time once we get into your Friday night. So that's really going to be around sunset Friday that we could see the potential for a little bit of some dry time showing up then. That's only because, though, everything is going to try to reset a little bit in the atmosphere as that area of low pressure finally gets closer to us. And with that comes even heavier rain. And here's the thing that I've been seeing on basically all of the models, and this is why I'm a little concerned, is because you see all the reds and oranges on your screen, yes, but notice the pinks and how it bows out a little bit like a C, like a backward C there in the middle of your screen. That shows to me that with the bowing segments, we have the potential for some very strong wind gusts if that actually occurs embedded in some of those storms. So Phyllis, you were asking the potential for high winds embedded in some of those storms Friday night into Saturday morning. That chance certainly is there. Now, it's probably not going to be as high as what we saw earlier this month, but still 60 plus mile per hour wind gusts within some of these thunderstorms, certainly a threat that we have to watch very, very closely. And we're going to be watching all of this rain, thankfully, moving out. It looks like by the time the sun comes up Saturday. So Saturday could actually end up becoming a pretty decent day rain-wise, but the wind on Saturday is another thing that we have to keep an eye on. Now, for really rainfall totals, what we're looking at around 2 to 4 inches of rain. Still watching those totals really for those of you between the parkways and up towards 64. That's where we're looking at that rain in terms of rainfall. But then for those of you further to the north, I cannot rule out the potential for 4+ inches of rain. And that means our rivers, so like the East Fork of the White River, a lot of our lakes in Indiana, Patoka Lake, really could see the impact from the rain. And it's not just something that we'll see as the rain is falling, but it's also a concern once we start to get into Saturday and Sunday too, as everything starts to drain out. So a little bit more of what we're going to be looking at in terms of river flooding comes into play once the rain stops. So it's a twofold flooding situation. As the rain is falling, it's flash flooding. Once the rain stops, it switches over to a river flooding situation in some spots. So it is going to be some pretty heavy rain coming our way with that. For those of you further to the south of the parkways, are really talking around 1 to 2 inches of rain. So you're not going to see as much, but with some of those stronger thunderstorms, I cannot rule out some higher totals either as we get into Friday night, Saturday morning. So still going to be keeping an eye on you further to the south as well, even though you're not technically underneath the flood watch. Now, something else we have to watch for Friday night into Saturday is the severe risk. And notice we are every single one of us outlook with some sort of severe risk as we get into Friday. But the greater risk, that slight risk, that yellow on your screen for those of you south of 64, is where we're a little bit more concerned. So across more of our southern Kentucky counties, so from basically Meade County down to Adair County and Grayson County, you're included in this slight risk because this is where we could see some of those stronger wind gusts with some of those thunderstorms. And that is something that a lot of the models have been still focusing in on Kentucky for that severe thunderstorm threat. That threat is lower for those of you in southern Indiana because you have the rain longer, so the air is going to be a little bit more stable for you. So that's something that comes into play. But this is where we could see some of those stronger wind gusts really coming into focus with some of those thunderstorms come Friday night and Saturday morning. And also we'll be watching for an isolated tornado threat as well during this time frame. So I want to make sure everyone has multiple ways to get alerts, since some of the strongest thunderstorms that we will be seeing will be during the overnight time frame. So we'll have to keep an eye on that very, very closely during that as well. And, you know, the entire storm tracking team will be watching this. Now, once we get into Saturday, I know a lot going on from Bachfest to the Lou City game, that first home game of the season. So we are going to be watching things drying out, thankfully, as we get into the afternoon. But the wind will also be picking up on Saturday. So that's something we'll have to watch closely. I was actually talking with one of our directors here, and he's like, he's going to the Lou City game. I'm like, it'd be very interesting with the wind direction. Thankfully, it's more of a horseshoe shape, so the wind won't be as much of a factor. But we were kind of giggling like, hey, that wind could be blowing the ball back. The players are trying to do their thing. But yeah, we're talking about the potential for wind gusts come Saturday between 40 and 50 miles per hour. So very, very strong winds after all the rain is gone, especially if we get some sunshine. So we'll have to watch all of that pretty closely. Sunday not looking too bad. And then once we get towards the end of next week, that's when we see a slightly higher rain chance coming into the forecast. Ashley, you were asking how high the tornado threat was. Actually, that tornado threat is a lot higher off towards our southwest, so it's not as high for us, but I cannot say that it's zero because it's not. but it's low and it's there. So I want to make sure that everyone is aware of it, especially if we get a little bit more of those bowing segments with some of those thunderstorms. We could see a little bit of a spin up tornado situation trying to happen with that. But once again, that threat is low, but I'm not going to ignore it either because the chance is there. And I want to make sure everyone is fully aware of every potential threat that could come into play. So a lot to watch, of course, as we head into the next 24 to 48 hours. But the rain is the main thing. So if your basement's been flooding, if you know the creek behind your house floods pretty easily, this is a situation where you may end up with some issues with that. So just be extra careful. If you live, especially near the East Fork of the White River in southern Indiana, that's one of those places that we have to watch very, very closely in terms of river flooding and flash flooding, since that's where a lot of that rain is going to be initially as well. So there's so much to watch, but of course, we'll be all here breaking it down. Well, except for Brian Good. He's missing out on this one. But the rest of us will be here keeping an eye on all of this as we head into the next 24 to 48 hours. And Derek, I see your question. The stores and restaurants in Floyd and Clark County should be just fine. Of course, I know all of those store owners are probably paying close attention to the forecast as well, with the rain coming our way. So as the rain is coming down, it's not as much of a wind threat. It's more of a flooding threat. But once we start to see some of those stronger storms moving in Friday night, that's when a little bit more of the severe weather tries to come into play. So a lot to watch. And of course, I'll be keeping an eye on it for you. You can always listen on midday. I'll be there on midday today filling in for Brian Good if you want to tune in and watch me. And then I'll continue to keep you updated as well with everything else. Nancy, before I go, I want to answer your question. So Nancy, your daughter works in Shepherdsville. So in terms of the timing of the rain, remember most of the rain, southern Indiana, for later on tonight. So after around 7, 8 o'clock, that's when southern Indiana gets into play. Everybody else sees more of that rain taking over after midnight. So especially as we get closer to 3, 4, 5 a.m., that's when some more of that rain sinks south. So towards Louisville, towards Shepherdsville. And also going to be keeping an eye, of course, on the storms, the strongest storms in terms of severe threat. That is Friday night into Saturday morning. So the rain starts tonight. The severe threat, the main severe threat is Friday night into Saturday morning. So just everybody pay close attention to the forecast. Make sure you're keeping an eye on the Wave Weather app as well, because we'll be updating there first with the latest information. So everyone stay safe, everyone stay dry, and make sure you remain weather aware.